I didn't do anything.
Ma'am, calm down.
Get your hands off me!
Let's go, now.
Ma'am, you need to stand up now. The officer's grip closed around her forearm as phones popped up like lighters at a concert. In first class suite 1, a young black woman in a simple hoodie blinked, stunned because she wasn't screaming, wasn't fighting, wasn't doing anything except sitting in the seat she paid for. A white businessman in the aisle smirked like he'd just won a game. The flight attendant's voice turned sharp. You don't belong in this cabin. The officer tugged again, harder, and the girl's carry-on slid, thumping into the seat. She inhaled once, steady, then whispered, "If you touch me again, you're going to lose everything." Like and subscribe, you're watching Echo Story. Her name was Aaliyah Vaughn, 26. And the word girl followed her because people treated her like she couldn't possibly be the kind of woman who owns power. She'd learned to dress down in public after too many viral photos, too many strangers demanding proof of her identity, like she was a fraud in her own life. Today, she wasn't in a blazer or heels. She was exhausted, private jet plans ruined by a mechanical delay, a family event in London starting tonight, and the only commercial option left, Stratosphere Air to Heathrow, one first-class suite remaining. She'd booked it last minute through a holding company. No announcements, no VIP greeting, just quiet. She wanted sleep, not worship, not hate. JFK Terminal 4 hit her like noise made physical, rolling suitcases, crying toddlers, coffee breath. Impatience. Aaliyah kept her hood up and her headphones in, moving like a shadow. At the priority counter, the agent glanced at her boarding pass and then at her face with a tiny pause that said, "First class? You?" The agent printed the pass without warmth. Gate B32. Aaliyah thanked her anyway, because she didn't want trouble, didn't want attention. She found a corner near the gate and waited with her backpack hugged to her chest like armor. Around her, polished travelers compared watches and conference schedules. Aaliyah stared at the floor and reminded herself, "You're not here to prove anything. You're here to get home." Boarding began, and the gate agent Kyle, hair gel sharp enough to cut glass, scanned her pass. The screen flashed green. Kyle's smile didn't appear. Seat 1A, he read, eyes narrowing like the machine had betrayed him. Aaliyah stepped onto the jet bridge, cool air washing over her face. She boarded, found her suite, stowed her bag, and slid the door halfway closed. The seat was massive, the lighting soft, the kind of comfort money buys when the world refuses to be gentle. She kicked off her sneakers and exhaled like a person setting down a week of weight. She didn't ask for champagne. She put on her eye mask and leaned back, finally letting her body believe it was safe. A sharp tap broke the peace. Behind Jana stood a man in a tailored navy suit, silver hair, and entitlement poured into his posture. He held his boarding pass like a weapon. "We need to verify your seat," Jana said, voice sugary but cold. Aaliyah handed over her boarding pass. Jana stared too long, then compared it with the man's. The man scoffed. "I always sit in 1A, he declared loudly so everyone could hear. "I'm an Imperium Diamond member. This is my seat." Aaliyah's voice stayed calm. "My pass says 1A. The gate scanned me. I'm not moving." The man's name was Bradford Weller, the type who spoke in declarations, not conversations. "Look at her," he sneered, loud enough to pull eyes from other suites. "She's in a hoodie. That seat costs more than her whole outfit." Aaliyah sat up straight. "What exactly does an expensive passenger look like?" she asked. Bradford's smile sharpened. "Not like you." Janice's shoulders stiffened as if she'd found permission. "Miss, there's been an error. Your things and step to the galley while we sort this out." Aaliyah's stomach tightened, not fear, but the familiar pattern. "No," she said evenly. Bradford leaned closer, breath smelling like confidence and cologne. Janice's voice dropped, losing the customer service mask. If you refuse, we can have you removed for non-compliance. Aaliyah looked around. A few passengers pretended not to see. A woman in 2F frowned like she wanted to help but didn't know how. Aaliyah's hands remained on her lap, visible, controlled, because she knew how quickly calm could be mislabeled aggressive. She pulled out her phone, not to film for attention, but to protect reality. Janice snapped, "No recording." Aaliyah didn't raise her voice. "Then do everything correctly," she said. "Because if you don't, this won't be a private mistake." Janice pressed the interphone with a dramatic flourish. "Gate assistance to first class," she said, eyes locked on Aaliyah like a threat. Bradford smiled, satisfied. Minutes later, Kyle arrived with 2 Port Authority officers. They were professional but heavy with authority, the kind that makes air feel thinner, and refusing crew instructions. Aaliyah held up her boarding pass. "Please look," she said calmly. The officer didn't take it. "Ma'am, stand up and come with us so we can resolve this off the aircraft." "If I leave, you'll close the door and I lose my seat," she said. "This is how it happens." Bradford chuckled. "She thinks she's important." Asterisk, the officer repeated, firmer. Janice folded her arms like she'd already decided the ending. Aaliyah stayed seated. "I'm not resisting," she said. "I'm asking you to verify." Kyle waved his hand. "You're trespassing," he lied, eyes darting away from the paper. That word trespassing lit up the cabin. Aaliyah's pulse spiked. She didn't scream. She didn't swing. She simply said, "Do not touch me." The officer reached anyway. His hand closed on her arm, and Aaliyah's sweet door slid open fully as people leaned to watch. Bradford clapped once, like this was entertainment. Aaliyah's bag shifted, falling partly from the overhead bin. The cabin felt suddenly ancient, like history repeating itself in expensive seats. They pulled her up. Aaliyah's hoodie slipped back, revealing her face clearly young, composed, eyes blazing with controlled disbelief. She didn't fight. She went rigid, then limp, like protest training she'd learned for a world that mistakes survival for defiance. The officers dragged her into the aisle as her sneakers scraped the carpet. A passenger shouted, "She's not doing anything." Another phone rose, recording from a different angle. Janice snapped, "Stop filming." But it was already too late. Truth had multiple cameras. Bradford leaned aside, smirking, and Aaliyah locked eyes with him as she was hauled forward. "Enjoy the seat," she said quietly. "It's going to cost you your life as you know it." Bradford laughed. "Sure, sweetheart." The aircraft door slammed behind her a moment later, sealing the cabin like a secret. On the jet bridge, the cool air hit Aaliyah's face like an insult. She steadied herself against the wall, breathing slow. Kyle stood over her like a referee who thought he'd won. "You're banned from Stratosphere," he hissed. "Don't ever come back." Aaliyah didn't beg. She didn't argue. She reached into her pocket, retrieved her phone, and called one name, Davis, her chief of staff. The moment he answered, his voice was tight. "I saw the video," he said. "It's already trending." Aaliyah's tone was eerily calm. "Good," she replied. "Now pull up Stratosphere's shareholder registry. I want the majority stake. Buyer list, and get me legal on standby." Davis swallowed. "Aaliyah, are you about to?" She cut in softly. "I'm about to make this airline remember my name." In a quiet airport hotel suite overlooking the runway, Aaliyah changed. Into a clean blazer Davis brought her, not to impress, but to focus. 3 screens glowed with numbers and breaking headlines. "Stratosphere stock is dropping fast," an analyst said. The video hit as overseas markets opened. Aaliyah watched the chart fall like a cliff. She didn't smile. "What's the parent company?" she asked. "Global Wings Group," Davis replied. They're vulnerable right now. Debt pressure, missed projections. Alia nodded once. Then we buy the dip, she said. Not for money, for control. Davis hesitated. This will be expensive. Alia's gaze stayed on the runway where her flight had departed without her. So was what they did, she replied. Execute the acquisition vehicle, quietly. Fast. She looked at the paused video frame of herself being dragged. And find Bradford Weller. I want his employer. I want his board. I want consequences that reach beyond this plane. Davis's fingers flew. Calls went out. Bank legal compliance. Alia made one call herself to Global Wings CEO Arthur Pendleton, a man she'd met once at a gala where he'd spoken past her, like she was invisible. Miss Vaughn, he answered, voice strained. We're preparing a settlement. We'll offer a refund, and Alia interrupted, calm as ice. I don't want a refund, Arthur exhaled. Then what do you want? Alia's eyes didn't blink. I want your seat, she said. Silence. Excuse me? He stammered. Refresh your shareholder registry, Alia continued. Look at Class A voting shares. Arthur's keyboard clicked frantically. Then an audible gasp. Vaughn Capital, 12%. 15. Alia checked her own screen. 51, she corrected quietly. You let your staff treat me like disposable. Now your company is mine. The next morning, Stratosphere's headquarters went into emergency mode. Arthur Pendleton's resignation letter leaked within an hour. Alia didn't do a flashy press conference. She did something sharper. She sent an internal memo to every employee and contractor. Effective immediately, it read, all removal requests must include verified documentation, dual authorization, and body cam review where applicable. Customer disputes are resolved by policy, not prejudice. She requested the full incident. File, gate logs, seat assignment history, employee statements, and passenger videos. The seat had been double booked, Alia's paid suite overwritten by a manual override for a valued frequent flyer. She stared at the timestamp and felt her chest tighten again. It wasn't accidental, it was intentional. She said one sentence to her counsel, I want accountability, not scapegoats. Then she added, start with Janice, Kyle, and the officers who refused to verify. Alia flew to London that afternoon on a different airline. Quietly then walked into a boardroom filled with men in suits who suddenly knew exactly who she was. You bought an airline because of a seat dispute? One board member asked, attempting a laugh. Alia's eyes stayed steady. No, she replied. I bought an airline because your culture made it normal to humiliate a black woman. And I bought an airline because your culture made it normal to humiliate a black woman. It isn't normal to humiliate a black woman in public, then call it procedure. She played the video on the wall multiple angles, multiple voices saying, she's not doing anything. She didn't let the room look away. This is not PR, she continued. This is operations. If you can't treat a paying passenger with dignity, you are not safe. The room fell silent, because safety was their favorite word until it applied to someone like her. Back at JFK, Janice sat in a small HR office, hands shaking. Kyle sat beside her, jaw clenched. A compliance officer played the gate log report. Seat 1A was assigned to Ms. Vaughn first, the officer said. It was overwritten. Kyle's face went pale. I was told to fix it, he muttered. By who? HR asked. Kyle didn't answer. Janice tried to soften it. I thought she was... I didn't know. The compliance officer cut in. You didn't know her net worth. You did know she had a valid pass. You chose to ignore it. Janice's eyes filled with tears. Bradford said he'd report me, she whispered. I panicked. HR leaned forward. So you redirected fear into power over someone you thought couldn't fight back. The room went quiet. Because that sentence explained too much. Bradford Weller landed in London feeling victorious until his phone turned on. Notifications exploded. His face was everywhere, smirking while a young woman was dragged out. He opened. His work email account locked. He called his assistant straight to voicemail. Then a text from his managing partner. Do not come into the office. You are terminated. We're issuing a statement distancing ourselves. Legal will contact you. Bradford's breath turned shallow. On the airport TV, a breaking news banner scrolled. Vaughn Capital acquires controlling stake in Global Wings Group, parent of Stratosphere Air. Bradford's knees weakened. He whispered, "She bought the airline?" A stranger beside him laughed sharp and cruel. "You messed with the owner," the stranger said. Bradford's world shrank to a single thought. I treated her like nothing. And nothing is what I'm about to become. Aaliyah returned to JFK, not with cameras, but with auditors. She walked the jet bridge where she'd been thrown out, her steps slow, deliberate. The airport director greeted her like a celebrity. Aaliyah raised a hand. "Don't perform," she said. "Show me the process." In a conference room, the Port Authority reviewed the officer's conduct. Aaliyah requested the body cam footage and the decision chain. "You escalated without verification," she told them, voice calm. "That's not safety. That's assumption." One officer tried to defend it. Crew said she was unruly. Aaliyah leaned forward. "Did you witness unruly behavior?" The officer hesitated. "No," Aaliyah nodded. "Then you acted on bias wearing a badge. That will be addressed." She didn't threaten. She promised procedure, because procedure was the language power understood. Within 2 weeks, Stratosphere announced changes that weren't cosmetic: independent compliance oversight, retraining, and a new customer dispute protocol with mandatory verification steps. Janice was terminated for cause. Kyle was terminated for falsifying the trespass claim. The manual override access that enabled the double book was locked behind audit approvals. And the airline quietly settled with the passengers who were distressed by witnessing the incident, not to buy silence, but to acknowledge harm. Aaliyah hired the woman in 2F who had recorded the clearest video offering her a role in the airline's ethics and accountability communications team. "I didn't want fame," the woman admitted. Aaliyah nodded. "Neither did I," she said, "but we both ended up holding truth, so let's use it." On a crisp morning, Aaliyah boarded a Stratosphere. Flight again, this time not hidden, not announced, just present. The same first-class cabin looked different, not because of new leather, but because of new eyes. A flight attendant greeted her by name, genuine, steady. Aaliyah sat in 1A and closed her suite door halfway, the same way she had before the nightmare. She didn't feel victory. She felt responsibility. She opened her notes and wrote one line: "Luxury without dignity is just expensive cruelty." Then she looked out the window at the tarmac and let herself breathe. Later, when people asked what she did next, she didn't say, "I destroyed careers." She said, "I destroyed the comfort people had in disrespect." And somewhere online, Echo Story viewers kept replaying the moment she stayed calm, because calm is what scares arrogant people most.